M&Ms drops Kyle Busch, here's why that's important, and NASCAR confirms that they're going with high horsepower, low downforce everywhere next season. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I've been out of town the last 5 or 6 days, so we've got a lot to catch up on today. The big news this week so far, M&Ms, longtime NASCAR sponsor, longtime Kyle Busch sponsor, is pulling out after 2022. NASCAR, over the course of like a month, has shifted from high downforce to low downforce everywhere regarding next year's rules package, and we've got some other smaller tidbits to discuss as well. Let's get started. First, and this is somewhat NASCAR related, Kasey Kahne announced today that he will run the entire World of Outlaws schedule next season. Kasey Kahne has not raced in NASCAR since 2018, but he's run a lot of dirt races since then. He's been part-time in the World of Outlaws. Of course, he owns a World of Outlaws team that's won championships with Brad Sweet. Next year, though, he intends to race the entire schedule himself. So if you're a longtime Kasey Kahne fan, a big NASCAR fan, might give you a good reason to check out your local dirt track when the World of Outlaws sprint cars come to town. I've been to a couple races myself now, and let me just say they are an experience. In person, they are something else. If you're not really a dirt racing fan, I'd say give the World of Outlaws a chance. Sprint cars are pretty darn cool. If you're a longtime sprint car fan, you know I'm underselling it right now. I don't follow dirt racing super closely, but the few times I've seen it in person, I've been incredibly impressed. So I'll definitely have to check out Kasey Kahne on the World of Outlaws schedule next year. Second, I know a few days ago I posted my top 10 least favorite paint schemes of the 2021 season. I still have not gotten that green out of my head. But from one bad green paint scheme to a good one, yesterday, Joe Gibbs Racing revealed Kyle Busch's 2022 Interstate Battery scheme, and this looks fantastic. Excellent use of the new door space. The Interstate Battery logo's at an angle there, fills the space perfectly. This is a fantastic scheme. I mean, the green and the lightning effects are very similar to what they've run the last couple of years, but they're maximizing the space. That's all anyone can ask for. Proof that sliding the door number forward can look good if the sponsor and team play nicely. Now, from one good bit of Kyle Busch sponsorship news to some bad Kyle Busch sponsorship news. You've probably already seen this headline, but yes, M&Ms, Mars Candy Company, is leaving both Joe Gibbs Racing and Kyle Busch and NASCAR at the end of the 2022 season. Reported by Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal, Mars Global, makers of M&Ms, is set to exit NASCAR and JGR after the 2022 season after a long time run in the sport. Kyle Busch put this statement out on social media: "My appreciation for the entire Mars family is eternal. With 55 wins and 2 Cup titles together, we've built friendships that will last way past 2022. The Mars family has always accepted me for who I am, and I'll always be thankful for that. Here's to many more trips to victory lane in 2022. This, of course, is earth-shattering news in the racing world. M&Ms has been Kyle Busch's primary sponsor since 2008. They've been in NASCAR since the 90s. They're the official chocolate or official candy of NASCAR currently, and have for years been one of, if not the most iconic paint schemes on track. When we think of iconic looks and paint schemes in NASCAR history, we think of the Petty Blue 43, but that was decades ago. We think of the Dale Earnhardt Black number 3, but that too is now decades old. As far as modern paint schemes are concerned, the M&Ms car is consistently one of the most recognizable. And after next season, we won't be seeing it on track anymore, at least for the time being." Sports Business Journal talked to Joe Gibbs Racing team president Dave Alpern, and Alpern said that M&Ms basically wanted to try something new. "I don't view it as a diminishing return or that the deal wasn't working. They just want to try some new things." So obviously Joe Gibbs Racing, they're going to try and spin this into a positive, but that quote, we'll talk about more in a second, is painful for a number of reasons. According to Bob Pocker's Fox Sports, Mars apparently told Joe Gibbs Racing this past summer that they would not be renewing after 2022. So Joe Gibbs Racing and Kyle Busch have known for months that M&Ms was leaving after next season. Bob Pocker's also puts this interesting detail out. For one, he says Kyle Busch's current deal runs through at least 2023, so no issues as far as his status with the team. But he adds, with Joe Gibbs Racing pitching to new sponsors, this is a good opportunity for Kyle to find a sponsor who wants to do the Indy 500 as well. That is an interesting tidbit. Kyle Busch is a generational competitor, a generational racing talent, and he's still in the prime of his career. It would be a disservice if he didn't attempt one of the biggest races in the world while he's still in his prime. His brother Kurt raced in the Indy 500 7 years ago now and finished 6th, so the bar's been set pretty high by the other Busch brother, Kyle Busch. He's a competitor. You know he wants to try and eclipse that. I'd love to see Kyle Busch in the Indy 500. Who wouldn't? I feel like that goes without saying, but I do find it interesting that Bob Pocker's Lewis would throw that tidbit in there. Was M&Ms not cool with running the Indy 500? Were they not going to foot the bill? Was there some sort of conflict there? I have no idea, but hopefully Kyle Busch finds a sponsor, a team, and a situation that allows him to be competitive in the Indianapolis 500. I think racing fans across the world would benefit from that. I don't want to get too far off topic. There are some positives to come out of this. You know, this is now a great opportunity for Joe Gibbs Racing to go out and find another major sponsor, maybe someone new who is not currently invested in NASCAR, bring them on board with one of the most recognizable, one of the most talented drivers. Much like how Hendrick was able to introduce Ally to NASCAR. I know technically they're the old GMAC brand, but they've been out of the sport for a while. They brought them back, and they came back in a huge way with TV commercials with Jimmy Johnson sponsoring every single race. Now they've adopted Alex Bowman, and I've seen them plaster his face on billboards. You know, Ally has gotten into NASCAR in a big way across the board. As much as we love M&Ms, as recognizable as they are, let's be honest, I don't feel as though M&Ms was taking full advantage of their NASCAR partnership. I didn't see any Kyle Busch M&Ms commercials in recent years. I go to the grocery store all the time, and sometimes I would see a official candy of NASCAR logo there on the M&Ms display, but rarely. I had to squint to find it. This is a good opportunity for Joe Gibbs Racing to find their ally, if you will. Someone who will not only boost Joe Gibbs Racing, boost Kyle Busch, get his face, get his brand out there, but might also look elsewhere in NASCAR and be a huge boost for the entire, sanctioned by the entire series going forward. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but there is a reason to be at least optimistic there. But that does not ease the pain that many fans are feeling right now. I mean, NASCAR just lost a major brand, a super recognizable consumer-focused brand. A brand that appeals to children in ways that, you know, Napa Auto Parts, Discount Tire, and Pennzoil don't. You may think this is silly, but I'm genuinely concerned that with M&Ms leaving the sport, it's going to be even harder now for NASCAR to reach young audiences, specifically kids, specifically highly impressionable children. Like, I remember the first NASCAR diecast toy car I ever played with was an M&M's number 36. It may sound silly, but the bright, colorful race car is appealing to 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And losing that is going to make it harder to catch the interest of children. That may sound silly, but I genuinely believe it to be true. That's why this stings. Not only that, but it hurts knowing that Kyle Busch is one of the best drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series today. He won a championship 2 years ago, and he nearly made the championship for just last month. If the team or the driver is struggling and aren't contending for wins, aren't running in the top 5, top 10 anymore, then if a big sponsor leaves, you kind of understand it. The performance wasn't there. They weren't getting the exposure, the TV time, the success on track that they were paying for. But when you have a situation like this where Kyle Busch is still winning every single season, he's still running up front, and the sponsor still leaves, that stings. That's when it really hurts. Like how Lowe's dropped Jimmy Johnson less than 2 years after he won his 7th championship. Or Dollar General left Joe Gibbs Racing and Matt Kenseth despite winning 14 races in 4 years. M&M's was getting some of the best screen time any sponsor can hope to get in the NASCAR Cup Series, and it still wasn't enough for them to see it through and stick it out into the next gen era. That's disappointing. More than likely it has to do with some upper management changes. I know they've swapped out some high-up people over there the last couple of years. I know that was largely credited as the reason Dollar General pulled out of NASCAR when they did. I'm sure that is playing a role here. When new people get involved, they look at what the company's spending money on, and they may have different priorities. And for whoever's currently in charge of Mars, of M&M's, racing, Kyle Busch, Joe Gibbs Racing is not a top priority, it seems. Joe Gibbs Racing says their return on investment was still really high. Don't know what M&M's would say about that, but it is disappointing to see a major recognizable brand pull out of the sport right before this new era is set to set off. Like, I know they'll still be on the car in 2022, the first year of the next gen, but it sounds like they decided to pull out months ago before even the door number placement had been finalized. So they made this decision a long time ago, and the next gen was not enough to keep them invested. Disappointing, but I do expect Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing to find a replacement or replacements. They may not pay quite the same price M&M's was paying, but I'm sure they'll find something serviceable, someone who's invested in the team, invested in the series. We'll just have to wait and see who it is. Lastly, and we've been covering this for a couple of weeks now, but it's official. NASCAR is upping the horsepower at the big tracks next season and lowering the downforce. That's right, earlier this week, NASCAR announced they will run 670 horsepower with 4-inch spoilers at every track in 2022, outside of Daytona and Talladega and likely Atlanta, the super speedways. That's right, they're considering Atlanta a super speedway now. I told y'all, they were trying to turn it into a pack race. But this is huge, huge news, and the entire script, the entire narrative flipped over the course of like a month and a half. Remember, about a month ago, they tested at the Charlotte Oval, the mile and a half, and they were testing 550 horsepower. Remember, months ago they announced, oh yeah, we're gonna have 550 horsepower at all the intermediates next season. But after that test in November didn't go very well, NASCAR went back to the drawing board. Credit to them. They conferenced with drivers, with teams, with engineers to discuss what changes needed to be made, what would make the cars race better, what would make it easier to pass, what would make the drivers happy and hopefully therefore make the fans happy, and they settled on a higher horsepower package for the big tracks. 670 horsepower, as we've been talking about, is very similar to what the Xfinity Series races at those tracks. And the 4-inch spoiler, that's the same small spoiler that they raced at short tracks and road courses last season. So basically, in the span of a month, we went from having low horsepower, high downforce at all the ovals next year, the big ovals next year, to quite honestly the exact opposite. Higher horsepower and low downforce. Like a complete 180 in a month. That is shocking, especially this close to the start of the 2022 season, but it sounds like all the drivers are in favor of it. Awesome, says William Byron. Slipping and sliding around on 1.5 milers? Sign me up, says Chase Briscoe. From Cole Custer, pumped for NASCAR's decision here. Going to be some slipping and sliding. Mark Martin, this is great news. NASCAR in 2022 is going to be fun to watch. Brad Keselowski calls it an early Christmas present. And it just keeps going. Look, the drivers never talked about the 550 horsepower package like this, and that's been my point for the last year or so. Like early on, 2019, before the teams really had a handle the 550 package, we saw some great races, some very exciting moments at places like Kentucky, Chicagoland. But by the end of 2019, teams had figured it out. And all of 2020, the 550 package grew more and more tiresome, more and more frustrating as the weeks and months went on. That Kansas race at the end of 2020 sealed the deal for people like me, and I know for many other fans. The 550 package was a failure. We didn't want to see that kind of high downforce, high drag racing going forward. 2021, obviously, we had to deal with it for one more year before the next gen, but now with the next gen on the horizon, this is a huge win for, I think, NASCAR fans, generally speaking, for the sanctioning body to reverse course like this, to go with higher horsepower, low downforce. Because now you have the drivers speaking out honestly in support of it. You didn't hear drivers supporting the 550 package because for the most part, they did not like it. And like I always say, NASCAR fans are always going to care more about what their favorite driver has to say than what NASCAR executives are going to say. NASCAR executives can say, we like what we're seeing all they want, but NASCAR fans are always going to put more stock in what the drivers are saying. And more often than not, when talk of rules packages has come up the last couple of years, the drivers have been critical of the 550 high downforce package. So for NASCAR to reverse course on this, honestly, this is huge. This is a great moment of collaboration between NASCAR, the teams, and the drivers to get somewhere that the drivers are happy with and that hopefully fans will be happy with in 2022. You know, all along, NASCAR kind of pitched the 550 horsepower package as a necessary evil of sorts. Like, they'd say, hey, that's the number that new potential manufacturers are looking at. They don't want to build 900 horsepower engines, they want something smaller. 550 is very appealing to them. This week, Steve O'Donnell reversed that a little bit and said that 670 horsepower is still within the window that NASCAR believes will be appealing to new manufacturers. So that kind of bothers me because it proves all along NASCAR really just wanted closer racing. Baby Daytona, baby Talladega. That's what they wanted all along, because if 670 was always okay with new manufacturers, why have we not been running that since 2019? It's because NASCAR thought fans wanted some form of pack racing everywhere, and they never succeeded in getting that. We never got pack racing outside of Daytona and Talladega. Not for more than 5 laps after restart. No, that is no pack racing anywhere because 550 horsepower, quite frankly, was still too much horsepower. So that bothers me a little bit, but hey, better late than never. I'm happy to see them somewhat reverse course right here. What will the racing look like next season? We don't know. I think it's safe to say in 2022, the restarts at the big tracks will be a little more spread out. They won't be on top of each other, pushing and shoving and drafting 4 wide like they were with the 550 package, which some fans may miss, but in exchange, longer runs will likely be far more interesting. With more tire wear, you'll see more comers and goers, you'll see a lot more passing deeper into the run. Most importantly, you will see the best drivers shine next year. One of the reasons I loved the Southern 500 this year, there were some long runs, it was pretty strung out at times, but you could see it. The drivers were working so hard, lap after lap, to run that close to the outside wall, sliding, car hanging out, trying to conserve tires, trying to race their competition and race the racetrack as well. You could see the driver was in control. As I talked about a lot this last year, at 550 horsepower tracks, the drivers were put into a very tight box. There was only so much they could do to actually manipulate what their car was doing. They were so heavily affected by invisible forces like dirty air. Their actual ability to drive the car the way they wanted to drive it was limited. With 670 horsepower and less downforce next year, that box is now significantly wider. Drivers won't just be driving with their hands next season, they'll be driving with their feet once again. That's going to separate the men from the boys, the best from the mediocre, and it comes at at a perfect time because next year, all the cars are equal. Everyone from Rick Ware to Joe Gibbs Racing is getting the exact same base chassis. From a technical standpoint, the competition will be closer together than maybe ever before. The drivers, the crew chiefs, and the pit crew are gonna be what sets apart the best from the worst. And in order for those athletes to shine, you need that box to be wider. The next gen car now is going to allow the best drivers to shine, the worst drivers will struggle. We'll see more guys spin out on their own next year, testing those limits. It's gonna be, in my opinion, a better race next season at the big tracks than it's been at least the last 2 years. So I think fans will ultimately win out. There's still a lot of unknowns about this new car. It is still a very different vehicle from the ground up. Gonna be a learning experience all year long, but that's just my early prediction. More spread out restarts, but better, more action-packed, long-run racing, more comers and goers, more passing deeper into the run. I think fans will ultimately come around and like it, even though it may not always pass the eye test the way the 550 package sometimes did, where, guys were super close together, but not actually passing and were often being affected by invisible forces. Next gen car will not have as many of those problems. That's my early prediction, but there you have it. I know I forced a lot of different things into this one super huge recap episode. A lot of big stories early this week. I wanted to react to them right here with all of you. Thanks for bearing with me while I've been out of town the last few days. Now I'm back in town just in time for the holidays. But thank you all so much for watching. As always, a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters as well. Couldn't do the show without your tremendous support each and every month all year long. I greatly appreciate it. I will see you all again in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again real soon.